Take a look and check on that. Testing, testing. Do we have sound? Let's see. Is anybody reacting? Chat, tell me if we have sound. Can you hear me, chat? We got it? All right. Do I have to start over or shall we keep going? Okay, chat, I'm starting over. Hello, everybody. I am the Merc, and welcome to the Wardroom. This is a show in which we're going to relive recent battles together. So we're going to focus on grand strategy from a fleet admiral's perspective. We're going to address questions like how does the wind influence the battle? How are 13 guns used versus 8 guns and gunboats? And we're really going to focus in on what I like to call decision points. Crucial moments in a battle during which a single decision can mean victory or defeat, or at the very least, a nudge towards victory and defeat. Decision points can happen at any time. They represent a choice, like the choice to start your fleet with or against the wind, or the choice to split your fleet at some opportune moment or keep it together for the whole battle, or the choice to turn left or right at an oncoming island. Every decision point has pros and cons, and what makes a great admiral is knowing your decision points when they arise and trying to make the best calls. So, in the footage we're going to review today, there are a number of interesting decision points, and I'd like to look at a few of them that I believe decided the match in the Kraken's favor. What we're going to be looking at is the first match of the preseason, and that is the Krakens versus the SCP-38s. These are two incredible teams, and at a lot of decision points, they both made good decisions. But there are some things that we can look at to determine why one team won and why one team lost, and how they interface with the rules and the map and all sorts of other things. So, throughout the broadcast, I'll periodically be checking the chat. I am working off of a borrowed laptop with a single screen. So unfortunately, I can't see all of you right away. So make sure to leave any questions or comments that you want in the chat. I will try to pop over there occasionally if there are any questions. At the end of the broadcast, I'll go turn off my screen and go to the chat and answer any questions or talk with you guys as you guys are posting in the chat. Like I said, any questions or comments about what we're reviewing today. Try to keep it topical, but we'll have some fun. All right, so let's take a look at the battle. So the KRA KRN Krakens versus the SCP-38, which is the number 16, number 22 teams that got together. So let's go over to the beginning. I think the first thing is wind direction. Wind direction in this battle was north. So let's take a look at the overview here. And you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen that we've got the compass. North is basically straight up this way. And straight up this way is where the wind is blowing. So for those of you who don't know a ton about hold fast or hold fast naval, wind is simple. Wind makes your ship go faster. If you go with the wind, if you go what's called downwind, as in the wind is blowing you sort of down its path, you're going to have more speed. And if you're going upwind or against the wind, you're going to have less speed. Simple equation that means everything in these battles. So let's take a look at how these guys develop their opening move to use the wind or save the wind for later. So I'm going to skip forward a little bit to, let's say, 19-ish minutes here and take a look at the opening moves here. Now, this is the official broadcast, so they're going to cut sometimes to these other scenes, but you can get the gist of what's going on as I try to cut to some of the parts where we get to see them develop. As you can see, this is now south, so we've kind of flipped. That doorway back there is south. Both of the teams are headed south instead of north. This is a very interesting opening position for both, and it shows that the admirals of both of these teams really know what they're doing. They are going against the wind. You can see as I'll scroll back a little bit, or as you look at this fleet, you'll notice that they don't have any of their square cells up, or they do, but you can see the square cells actually going backwards. Do you notice that? The square cell going backwards means that you are going against the wind. And I'm sure these guys will cut their square cells soon. And you'll notice that on these two, there are no of these sails that would catch the wind that would be coming from behind. Only the triangular sails, which catch sails from the side, are deployed right now. This is showing that these captains really do know what they're doing. Now, why would you go against the wind to start off with? The answer to that question is something that Warble and I bring up very often. You're basically banking the wind for later. So as we can see here on the left, this is the KRN, KRA team, this is the Krakens, and this is the SCP-38. The KRA, KRN Krakens, and the SCP-38 in the beginning were going this way. You can see them turning now. We'll talk about that in a second. But the Krakens, their goal here is to get against the wind. Why? Why would you want to start having bad wind? Well, at the beginning of the battle, both of the fleets usually just pass each other, right? So if you can see my cursor here, these guys may go this way, and if these guys go, let's say, up the wind as they end up going, they're going to go this way. They're going to kind of cross in parallel lines with each other. Not cross, but pass each other in parallel lines. After that happens, and we'll talk about this as well later, you may end up in what's called, we call a death spiral. This is a little fun term that we have as admirals. A death spiral is when two fleets circle each other. When that happens, the fleet that doesn't have the wind at the beginning of the spiral can sometimes swing around and catch the wind by the end of the spiral. And that puts them in a situation where they can do something called crossing the T, which is passing behind or in front of enemy ships so that they can shoot the enemy and the enemy can't shoot them. We'll talk about all this through today's analysis. Now, the interesting thing here is one team or another oftentimes will break out of going against the wind to start off with. And in this situation, it's the SCP-38. So you can see here that instead of going past and through these islands and cutting down alongside the KRA, KRN to go towards this sort of like this opening down here, which is just basically against the wind. Remember, south being against the wind, north being with the wind. You can see that these guys are turning out. Now, it's not always a bad idea to catch the wind early. Sometimes it's good, but this far away from each other is a very early position to take the wind, to use the wind to your advantage. Here's a situation in which it would be interesting to use this strategy. It's when they're a lot closer. Basically, if you can get your opponent to commit to going against the wind, there are some negatives to going against the wind. Of course, the most important one is that your ships are going to go slow. It also means your ships are going to turn slow. So what it means is that you basically lack maneuverability. Now, to bank the wind for later means that you assume that the enemy is going to stay a fairly large distance away. You can go against the wind and not have good wind, but you can get a turn. And if you have the time to get that turn and then catch the wind later because your enemy has given you lots of space, that's no problem because you have the time to get out of that bad steering situation. But if you're very close to the enemy and they take the wind from you, so say that these guys were somehow like right here next to them, and then they immediately cut. Well, they would pass all the ships of this fleet and be able to hook around behind. That's a situation in which grabbing the wind might be good when both teams are going down the wind. But the SCP-38 chooses to do it a little earlier. It's not a death sentence. It's not the worst thing in the world. What they're doing is realizing that maybe they don't want to just have a line battle where both of the lines are just slowly sailing against the wind and slugging it out with their cannons. Maybe they're worried that the KRA, KRN might have better cannoneers. Maybe they just don't want to have so few tactical options. But for whatever reason, they turn out here and it changes the course of the battle. It's one of those decision points we were talking about. Let's fast forward to another still from a little bit later. As you can see, this team is now they're going in parallel lines against each other. But as you can see, the KRA, KRN are already turning in. This over here is now the SCP. They're already turning in. They immediately abandon going against the wind. They understand that this is going to be a battle where they're going to pass each other and they're going to turn. Now, because they're against the wind, when they turn this way, they're going to put a lot of pressure on the back of this SCP line. So let's watch how that goes. Now, the SCP did a really great thing here. We'll talk about boats a little bit later. They had this great rocket boat opening where they sent the rocket boats really, really far against the wind and they had to swing around and hit the front ships. I like the balls that this shows. I think this is a really, really cool opening move. It, in the end, did take out the carronade on this ship, which is really, really exciting. But I, in retrospect, don't necessarily think it was the best opening move. You only get two rocket boats in this league. You have four gunboats and two rocket boats, and you can only take out two at a time. This maneuver, while very flashy in the beginning, I don't think did enough damage to the enemy fleet to justify the loss of both of your rocket boats. Rocket boats are extraordinarily powerful ships. Their aim is terrible, their speed is terrible, their maneuverability is decent, so, but and they have almost no HP. The thing about them is the ability for them to just dispense damage onto the other team if not threatened. But what they did here is they put these two rocket boats in a position to threaten the enemy team, but not for very long. And they have the entire broadside to hit them with. So basically, as they pass these two gunboats here, or sorry, the rocket boats here, they're going to get those rocket boats are going to get sunk, and they do get sunk. They get sunk within a minute. So that is again, it was a very bold move, and I really respect the boldness of that move and what it shows is that the Admiral of the SCP is thinking, how do I disrupt the enemy line? The problem is, so early on in the game, the early part of the game is when the fleets are the most cohesive. They have the best fleet formations, they have the best communication, nobody's panicking yet, nobody's pressured by any of the other ships yet. It's the time when you want to risk any of these small ships the least, because this very strong fleet over here is going to very quickly dispatch of this issue. Now, what you can see here is this is the KRN. These are the rocket boats that are hitting them. They do get some great ones. This one's already sunk, almost instantly sunk. This one's going to get sunk in just a few more moments. Now, what you can see from the SCP here is they're turning away. Let me just go back to this. This is another interesting decision point. The SCP realize if we get into a circle, which is say if they go this way and the KRA Karen Krakens go this way, they're going to be against the wind and the Krakens are going to have the wind. The SCP Admiral knows this. He understands the wind dynamics that he has got himself into. And he realizes, and very intelligently, might I add, that he's got to change it. He's got to break the cycle. Because if he gets into a death spiral, the KRA Karen will cross behind these rear ships. As this fleet is turning, hitting against the wind and slowing down significantly, you're going to cross behind these ships and these ships are going to get absolutely devastated. If he turns away, these ships are still going to take some damage because the last ship to turn as they snake away are going to be these two ships. But I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the level of damage that they would get from a consistent pounding that the KRA Krakens would give them if they got them in a death spiral. I'm going to quickly tab over. I think I may have seen that we have some comments. Control, do we have comments that anybody's making that maybe could get addressed, or shall I continue going? No questions so far. All right, guys, keep in mind if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. Of course, I will be happy to address them, and we can also talk again more at the end. So let's get back into the battle. So the SCP guys turn out here. Their fleet admiral again. These are the SCP rocket boats and gunboats. Again, they are going to be gone very soon. As you can see, the fleet is turning out here. They're repositioning themselves and keeping the distance from the KRN. This last ship is getting pounded. There's no question about it. But that last ship taking the damage is a sacrifice that the SCP Admiral must make at this point. Must make. Now, there you go. Those are the two rocket boats going down. Again, to waste your rocket boats like this in the beginning of the battle only works and only means something if you disrupt the enemy fleet, because you're not going to do a lot of damage. You have to disrupt the enemy fleet. And I just don't think that that was accomplished. Again, do I see where they were coming from? Absolutely. Do I necessarily agree that it was the greatest strategy? I'm not sure that I do, but again, gotta love the cojones. Now, as the SCP has turned out, this is the battle as it becomes after the SCP turnout. This last ship has taken a significant amount of damage here. I would probably guess it's this ship with the HP here. You can see this this black amount of HP at the top. It's been reduced. It's damage, but it's not so much damage as to have made that maneuver like not worthwhile, to make it like some sort of Pyrrhic maneuver. It wasn't. It was the right maneuver, absolutely. And the SCP Admiral has to be commended for understanding when he was in a dangerous situation and pulling himself out of it. However, this has given the KRN a tremendous amount of time to catch the wind and use it. And at this point, as these two flagships intercept, you're going to see the KRN absolutely pull off a masterstroke here, which I think probably is one of the biggest decision points that wins them the battle. And what they do is they cross through this gap and engage this 13 gun. They cross its T, take out its cannons, and then board it. Now, let's watch. Because after that, more stuff happens here with the 8 guns that also is very important. But let's get into this first. So what we're seeing here is the fleets converging. This is the choke point right here. This is where everybody's got to go. There's no other options at this point, and the KRA Karen knows it. You can see the captain of the 13 gun knows what he's doing. He is far ahead of his fleet. Usually that can be a little bit dangerous, but it's not, because he knows I've got to get there first. I've got to cut off. And as you can see here, their cannons are absolutely ripping apart the SCP-38's flagship, knocking out all their cannons. This is a crossing the T situation. You can see it pretty clearly here. When one ship is crossing in front of the other and taking out his cannons, that is the goal. It's what we're all trying to do out here. We're all trying to cross T's. It is an opportunity for you to hit the enemy, but the enemy's cannons are facing this way, and your cannons are facing this way, and you have the opportunity to just take them out. This right here is when the SCP's flagship stopped being a threat. After this, it is involved in the battle, but it gets locked down from here on out, and it never plays another significant role in the battle. That is huge. Taking out the flagships is probably the most important number one objective that a fleet admiral has, and right here, the KRN admiral does it, and in style. This is one of my favorite moves from the entire season. He cuts in front, they collide, and it becomes boarding extravaganza. Now, I want you to notice, while this is happening, the rest of the KRA Canadian fleet is slipping this way. This is very interesting. You would think that they would follow the flagship, but either by the admiral's orders or on their own volition, they do not do so. Why? Why don't they go this way? Well, if they go this way, they've just tangled up both of their fleets. It's a mess. But if they go this way, they still are downwind. Remember, north, if you look down here, north is over here. So the wind is blowing from here down this way. They turn this way. They set them up to be against the wind again on these ships, which are turning in and following their flagship. These guys right now are probably in a panic. I can't know this. I'm just saying how I feel, and this is not representative of something that anyone has told me. I'm just judging it by what we're seeing. But these guys have got to be in a complete panic right now. They know they need to ram this ship. But what about the rest of these guys? And if the fleet captain is on this ship, does he have the wherewithal to even be commanding the rest of his fleet right now? Or is he just worried about the crisis that he's in because he's getting his T-cross? Let's keep watching. Okay, hold on. I've been told that there is a question, so I'm going to tab over and take a look at our questions. All right. Okay. Is there anything to be said about how isolated lead? Yeah. Okay. So the lead flagship, the reason that he's isolated is because he's like a dog that sees the hare in the field or whatever dogs hunt. He is racing towards this cutoff. There is something to be said about overextending yourself here. In this situation, something very bad could have happened. And what bad could have happened is this entire fleet follows this capital ship, and they all go through here while these ships cut off in this direction. If this entire fleet followed the flagship through, it would be this flagship versus virtually the entire fleet. I Again, if this captain had, and if I'm not sure if he's even the admiral, but if he had the presence of mind in that moment to think above his panic, because again, and I don't blame him for panicking. I don't blame him for having a huge crisis here. He's lost all of his cannons on his port side. He's getting his T-cross. He's about to go in for a boarding action. I would not have the wherewithal to command my fleet in this moment. I would be the only thinking about myself. But let's say he wasn't, and he was some super genius with 3 brains. One of those brains would be telling the rest of these guys, come with me and let's all take out this flagship together. We can deal with these 8 guns later. So the answer to your question is there is something to be said about this ship going so far ahead. But you could tell that with the intentionality that the KRA fleet is maneuvering, that they know what they're doing here. They know that these guys are kind of penned in. These islands here all create this zone where these guys are really not going to be able to escape except for through here. If they went through here, that would be bad. But they don't. Instead, they get caught in a circle here. The KRA gambit pays off in spades. Let's keep watching. And thanks for the question. So this is where they touch, obviously, a very, very interesting moment. Lots of melee dueling, lots of fun. There's a British rocket boat hitting behind the ship. I mean, this is about as bad of a situation as can be. But as you can see here, none of the 8 guns really come in to do anything. And that's where the flagship for the SCP really is doomed. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to get an overview here, and we're going to pause and take a look at that overview and see what it means for the battle. As you can see, these are the KRN 8 guns. Okay, they've slid through here and took this hook around. They have the wind. These guys are all against the wind right now. They have it. This is north. Wind is going this way. These guys have the wind. These guys don't. None of them went with the flagship. They left the flagship to its own devices. As you can see here, the SCP flagship is already below half. The KRA Karen flagship is a little bit above half. It's not a great place to be, but I think they're very confident that they're going to win the boarding action. They've got the cannons, and maybe they can even pull away. Not to mention they have a rocket boat behind the SCP flagship, just hammering it. This, guys, is what rocket boats are for. It is for finding a ship that is so distracted by the battle that it's in that it cannot possibly deal with you at the moment, and then just hammering huge rocket boat artillery into its backside or into its cannons or blowing up its crew. That's what the rocket boats excel at. And that's why I think this is an unsung hero of this battle. Because at the end of this battle, the victory is going to be determined by who has their flagship left. The KRA, KRN do, the SCP-38 do not. Let's continue watching because this gets very interesting. Sorry, say again, control room. Rocket boat is French. Hmm. Well, it doesn't look okay. So let's take a look here. I thought this was a British rocket boat. If it's not, then this is phenomenal. It can't. I mean, the rocket boat can't be French. The French have no rocket boats left. So this is definitely a British rocket boat. All right. So let's take a look here as we continue. Okay. What we see here is these again. These are SCP-38. These are the Krakens. This is the flagship battle. So this is a part where I found it very interesting. Now, one of these decision points for me, it was this. When I was watching, I was really thinking about how these guys had the ability to slip right away from these guys are stuck. They are against the wind. They don't have a lot of maneuverability. Most of them have stopped to engage in artillery duel. Me personally, I would have taken these ships and swung them over here and finish off that flagship. Left these guys completely behind. I know that that may be sort of a crazy thing to think about when you're in and engaging in a duel, but remember, flagships are so important, and you don't know what's happening over here. The HP differences between the flagships are not so much that we can say one is definitively going to win. Obviously, one is favored to win, but it's not definitive. I would have thought that these guys might have slipped around here and helped to finish off. They slip over here, turn their broadsides in, and hit that ship from behind. That is a game over for that flagship, and they get their flagship back. That's the thing that's the most interesting about that maneuver would be is that they'd actually recover the use of their flagship because right now their flagship is completely pinned down, not able to do anything. Nonetheless, they stick it out here. Let's watch as that progresses. As you can see, the British ships are their fleet formation is fine. Everybody's fleet formation is a little messy here. Everybody's panicking. Everybody's freaking out. Maybe I use the word panicking too much. Everybody's in the moment, in the heat of the moment. This guy does break off. What about the rest of them? Interesting to me that they don't all go. So let's see how it plays out here. So we do have the one that comes here, and he does try to finish this off. As we continue here, this is a death spiral. This is one of the death spirals that we were talking about. Now, the guys who had not had the fleet earlier, all these folks are about to get this fleet is about to get the wind. These guys are about to lose the wind. This is where things can get very ugly. Not only has only one of them left. See, this is why I think maybe all of them should have gone because now they're a man down. They're a ship down here against four other ships. I think one of the friendships is about to sink, evening it up, but still a risk, a big risk, especially when you don't know what the enemy's fleet HP is. Not a great formation here from the KRA, KRN 8 guns. Nonetheless, they do win. So we'll see how it goes. But they win, I mean, by a very close margin. This is interesting. We have here, this here is an SCP ship in about as good a position as you can be. When you're here, this is not a place that you want to leave. You have crossed one, two, three T's. You have beautiful shots on everybody. I know that you probably want to get out eventually, and he does, but actually, when he gets out, what does he do? He puts himself, he gets his own T crosses by putting out. I would honestly advise this captain in the future because he knew where he was. He was set up in a great position here. He knew that they had to hit this island and come to him or past the island. He was safe. I would have held with my back to the island. Do not underestimate the power of having an island to your back. The enemy cannot approach you without taking a tremendous amount of shots from you. And then when they cross behind you, they're basically tied to this island. Anything that makes a ship's movement predictable to you gives you the advantage of knowing where the ships will go and therefore being able to plan on your own how to counter that. All right, let's get back ahead. So here we are. We have the SCPs here. We have the KRA Karen here. The line has almost completely circled itself again. As you can see, let's see. Well, this is that great boarding action. As you can see here, It continues until the SCP whip back around. They got the wind. They end up here. Right here. It's a little moment I got to catch. There we go. Right here. Again, we're at a point here where once again the circle has circled. Now the KRN ships are about to catch the wind and swing around behind these guys. This is the problem, and this is the doom and the death of a death spiral. Okay, these doom death spirals, because one team is just constantly whipping around behind across behind another team, and so on and so forth. And the problem is that the tends to consolidate at the center. The lines don't stay far away circling each other. They tend to close in on one another. So anyway, let's see how this plays out. As we can see here, the flagships have been absolutely obliterated here. The KRN flagship has no masts, but the flagship over here is basically, if not already sunk, basically sunk. It's not looking good for them. Now, let's take a look at what happens here. This is a really great maneuver. I want to really give kudos to this guy. The guy who stays. As they're about to go against the wind, I think he was probably one of the guys that was in front. I can't tell. He might have been the lead previous ship. It's a great idea if you're about to get your T cross to just stop a ship, usually the first ship, because it ends up being, if it's in the front, it ends up being where the bad guys are going to cross behind you. So again, when they come around, you extend the curve that they need to do because now they need to curve around you. They might have tried to whip in and cross really shallow right here. They're not going to be able to do that though, because this guy is here saying it's not going to happen for you. All right, let's see now what happens. So things progress until we get to this position here. What's happened is I think what's happened is that the KRN, who were going to go this way, then swing about. They come around, they do an S turn, they create this S here, and then they've got range. They take some damage doing it, but what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we're done with the death spiral. Can't keep doing the death spiral. It's not working for us anymore. The SCP guys take it. Now, this is where another one of the decision points where the SCP team doesn't do themselves any favors. They know that if the ships end up being even at the end, which they are looking dangerously close to being, if they sink even one of the enemy ships, there is still the flagship and 2 8 guns left over. Right now, there's, I think, maybe even more than that. But they know that even if they reduce the enemy number of 8 guns, there is still a flagship. If they end up even, the flagship will be the decider. And of course, ultimately, the flagship is the decider in this battle. So, what ends up happening here, I would have liked to see them swing about, go through this channel here, hit the flagship, sink it. It's a sitting duck. There's nothing it can do. Maybe it can return fire for a little bit, but it can't return fire in a way enough that it can sink any one of these guys. I mean, take a look at the difference in the HP here. The SCP, though they have fewer ships, have stronger, more healthy ships. All of the KRN ships are reduced to below half their ship HP. All of the remaining SCP ships are above half their ship HP. This is a big deal. This is a very big deal. Now, they can't know what the enemy team has for HP, but they know their own HP. And I know for a fact that 3 8 guns on a crippled, demasted, beat the fuck up 13 gun can easily finish that fight. Let them finish it. Get in here and go attack that 13 gun. Now, the interesting thing that they're not doing here, and maybe the reason that they're not doing it is because there's also an 8 gun in over here. Remember the first 8 gun that had been with these KRN ships had gone over there to support its flagship. Not a bad move. Probably helps turn the tide of the battle in their favor. Maybe the SCP might have sunk and they had a mutual sink, if not for that ship and the rocket boat, which maybe it was British, maybe it's French. I'm not sure what it was. Either way, if it was a French rocket boat, these guys dealt with it. And if it wasn't, then it combined with them to sink the SCP flagship. Now, the SCP may be thinking, well, we have this ship out here. It's isolated. It's not in the battle. We need to run from it. Do a 3-on-3 with these guys. We can sink these ships, swing back around, and take the ship out 3-on-1. Not a bad strategy. I can definitely understand where they might be coming from with that. Let's focus in on this. The battle is nice and far away. This is leaving it to the artillery. As we can see here, here's a rocket boat. Probably one of the rocket boats that was harassing the capital ship in the beginning. This is why the rocket boats are so important. Again, rocket boats are late game sweepers. And as you can see, as is very evident, okay, having rocket boats, Having even one rocket boat, which is what this little symbol is here for the British, having even one rocket boat can make a huge difference. Even if it's not the thing that sinks ships, it can absolutely be the thing that harasses the ship so much that it distracts it. What you're going to see is this ship back here really get distracted by this rocket boat. It drifts backwards, it gets demasted, it gets taken out of the battle. These three very strong HP ships versus these three very weak HP ships get brought down to a 3v2 here because of this rocket boat. Let's watch. Skip a little bit ahead, and I really want you to see as this ship decides I cannot deal with this rocket boat anymore. We got this, you can see them; they're getting hit. This is the rocket boat. This is them getting hit by it. They know they need to do something. They're sending Marines. They're doing everything that you're supposed to do, right? They're trying to board the ship. They're trying to do everything they can. I think eventually a carpenter does deal with that ship. I think it even demasts it, which is a beautiful move. But just the moments of distraction where these cannons, as you can see, they're turning back into rotation now. These moments where these cannons were out of rotation, the ship gets out of line with its allies. All of these things are catastrophic. At the end of a battle like this, every single little decision matters because the narrowness between victory and defeat is so narrow. So let's see how it keeps going. Right now, we've got, yeah, see, there's the demasted gunboat, or sorry, rocket boat. It's going to keep firing, but that's it. It's not moving anywhere. This ship, I would have really needed to see more aggression from. So this ship needs to be just following. Right now, it's out of the battle. Turning this way means that it can get like maybe a really long range shot off here, but it's not going to do any significant damage to any of these ships. When you're in a position where you are isolated away from both of your lines, like right, everybody's lines going against you, you realize something. There is a point at which these fleets will stop. It's the wall. They will not go any farther than the wall. You need to be up their ass, following them at all times. Forget about getting damage here. You're not going to get damage here because if you turn your cannons in to get damage, you lose the wind. You lose the pursuit that you were pursuing. You increase the distance between you and your enemy. You will not get a lot of shots at them. You don't want to turn out like this. You want to follow. Even though you're not doing anything while you're following, you are there for when they hit the wall. Because as soon as they hit the wall, as soon as these sails go down, as soon as your enemy stops moving, that's when you turn your cannons in. And then you've got your three allies here shooting from this direction, and you having followed them maybe to somewhere around here, now you've got them boxed in. You've got this box of fire around them. They then have to make a choice. Do we turn one of our ships around to fight this? Do we keep firing at the three that are parallel to us? You put them in the position to make a shitty decision one way or the other. I would have liked to see this ship pursue faster. As we continue, they eventually do hit that wall. The sails start to get risen because actually, I think the sails rise. They don't drop like they drop when you start the sails. They rise when you whatever. Anyway, it all ends up here, and this is where things get messy, 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 messy. Now, I do not like this KRA KRN formula here, and I don't like that this ship is trying to reconnect with its fleet again. Pursue you. The best thing you can do right now, the best thing for you, is that you go over here and you wrap this guy up. You get him in a firefight, and you make sure that he has nothing to do with this battle, so you get your 3-on-1. The KRA KRN ships are very low. They need every diversion for every enemy ship that they can get. This is a great diversion for this ship. The rocket boats, the gunboats, great diversions for this ship. I think ultimately they probably do. I don't recall. I think they do distract this ship quite a bit. But aside from that, you know, again, I would have really liked to see this guy come down here and threaten them from the side. At the very least, this ship would have to deal with him, which would make this a 3-on-2. As it stands, this guy is going to get demasted, but I think he kind of gets into the battle before he does so. But also, just keep in mind here, all the boats you're seeing, the French have no boats. They have no boats left. All the boats that you're seeing here are British boats. Huge advantage to have at the end because they need it. Their main ships are very weak. The 8 guns on the enemy team are very strong. They need to be putting damage in here. I do not like this KRA KRN maneuver here. I don't like the distance between. I think what ends up happening is that maybe one of the ships might even be a little bit out of range. I can't confirm that. Let's take a closer look here. We have some gunboat action. This is really cool. But yeah, this is the part where I got pretty frustrated watching this because this guy is in no range at all. Now, maybe he's doing this because he's this guy. Maybe he has absolutely no ship HP left. And his thought here is, I got to get the hell out of this firefight. But a 1v3 firefight is where no one in the world wants to be. You don't want that. That said, much as I hated this when I was watching it, and I kind of just dissed it now, on retrospect, as we're watching it together, folks, this guy might have saved his entire team. If he sunk, it would just be the flagship in this ship, and the KRA Karen would have lost. So the Kraken's this guy might be the unsung hero of the whole battle because he pulled himself out of it. Don't be afraid to understand when your ship surviving is more important than your ship fighting. Here we have one, two, three friendships. So I'm assuming all three of these friendships are still good. At the end of the battle, we run out of time. Believe it or not, we run out of time. This ship is taking every bit of damage here. Yeah, that's this ship here. So that means that this guy back here is this weakened ship. This is such a dangerous position to be in. I mean, time may be the only thing that saved this ship. I think, to be totally honest, I sincerely don't know that if the clock had continued, that the KRA would have won this. Honestly, I think they probably wouldn't have. I think they would have probably gotten their ships sunk. Just these two ships up here, just these two French ships that I'm sorry. Oh, this is backwards. Don't worry. Now the things are reversed. Thank Holdfast. Sometimes the ship HPs beneath a team are completely backwards. I think just having this ship at like half HP, it may have been able to take out almost every other ship by itself. I'm not sure, but would have to see. At the end of the battle, let's take a look at just the final position of these ships. Obviously, our correspondents want to watch the fun stuff, which is people getting their ship blown up on these rowboats. But let's take one look at the final play here. Final play. We've got the British flagship up at an HP, which could be fighting. And they have one, I think, one remaining ship up, which is this guy right here. The French, if I'm not mistaken, have two ships up here. That's probably these two ships right here. This is so down to the wire, it's unbelievable. By the end of this, what we have to say is, do you remember how many of these ships were lit up when we looked at it last time? Take a look at what these French ships did. They ripped through these gunboats and rocket boats in these last few minutes. They were able to do so because they had very little pressure from just this single ship that was firing. This ship was a little bit too far away to do anything meaningful, which means that these guys had to basically sink this ship and then deal with the rocket boats and gunboats. At this point, they might have been thinking to themselves, oh man, we're about to win. We're just about to win. Maybe they've forgotten that this flagship is there. But either way, it's so close. I mean, really so close. This ship has so much HP. Whichever one of these is remaining with the high HP had so much HP, it very likely could have sunk this ship if like we had like infinite time. Sunk this ship, sunk the other remaining boat, and then gone out and put on an honest to God effort to sink the flagship. If we had more time, I have no idea who would have won this battle, but it's safe to say that, yeah, I was wrong about this guy. He is the MVP for the Krakens because by staying out of range here, letting this guy get sunk, whatever, by staying out of range here, he may have saved the whole thing for his team. So what we saw here is some really, really great decision points. We saw death spirals. We saw breaking out of death spirals, and the price that you pay usually if you're far enough away. So let's talk about the death spirals because if you're far enough away, right? So think of the maximum range. Let's just use the eight guns for an example. Okay, you're far enough away from an eight gun. Let's say you're in the mid 400s range, and that's probably pretty far for these eight guns. If you're doing a death spiral at that range, you can pull out and you're not going to take a lot of damage because very quickly after you pull out, you're going to outrange the enemy's maximum cannon range. Death spirals, when they start to get closer and closer and closer, that's when things get really dangerous. As a fleet admiral, as a captain, you have to be very careful about those moments. They are called death spirals for a reason. They kill you. And if the enemy does something tricky and gets behind you, you're done. You lose huge amounts of your HP. You sometimes can never recover. I think a lot of the damage that was done in that doom spiral earlier contributed to the SCP's team being, I think they having the advantage at the end, like the damage that they did to the Kraken ships. I mean, let's take a look. Let's just go back to an earlier part of the battle here. If you take a look at this point, when we're sort of in the relative beginning of this battle, let's get even earlier. I mean, this is where it all sort of starts. I know we're so hyper focused on the boarding action here because we want to put on a good show for the audience. But this is where it's kind of starting. Again, we have the SCP down here. We have the KRA, KRN up here. If you take a look, we have mostly intact British ships, and we have mostly intact French ships. By the time we get out to the part where we're here, those French ships are still looking pretty good. These British ships have gotten beat the hell up. That's the problem with so you have to credit the SCP-38. Their maneuvering during that doom spiral is what brought them into the end game with the advantage that they had. Now, the British team does have more ships, right? They have this ship left, right? They have two really low 8 guns, so they technically do have more. But like if I'm a fleet admiral and I'm looking at this ship, these three ships with good HP and all of these four ships with bad HP, I want this. I want this because I can concentrate these three's fire on each one of these individually and knock them out one after the other. I want that more than I want a bunch of ships with low HP. In the end, it didn't work out for them. But I mean, if you take a look, it didn't work out for them by just the smallest amount. It was really very close. And I have to, again, talk about how impactful the death spirals were, how impactful that 13 gun charging ahead of its fleet and taking out the SCP 13 gun, basically just it surviving. That's the difference. That's the victory right there. And the fact that the entire SCP just ignored that ship for the rest of the battle, unfortunately, I understand their motives. And in that moment, it makes some sense. But it is what lost them that fight. If they had taken those three really healthy 8 guns at the end of that doom spiral and swung them around to go fight the 13 gun and that 8 gun that was back there as well, they may have had a very different conclusion to this battle. We'll never know, but that would be my prediction that they probably would have won the battle at the end because of their high ship HP and their ability to coordinate. I think the Krakens took some amazing risks. The maneuver to when the capital ships clashed and the rest of the fleet, this part of the fleet swung in this way, a stroke of like absolute brilliance. It was such an interesting maneuver. Again, did it work out for them in the end? Not completely, because they didn't win this death spiral. They most certainly lost it. But the other alternative was following their flagship, and then they would have followed their flagship, and then they would have followed their flagship, and we would have had the biggest clusterfuck happening over here that you could possibly imagine. That probably wouldn't have served anybody particularly well. It would have been just pure chaos. Everybody shooting everybody, complete loss of fleet cohesion. Who knows what would have happened here? I think the battle was far more interesting, at least, because the KRN and the KRA moved their ships and started the spiral here. And they were the ones who broke it off. Breaking it off was another risky maneuver, probably contributed to the fact that they had lower ship HP when they came out of it. But at the end of the day, the maneuvers that they made towards the very end, when they were all towards this wall, I mean, the results speak for themselves. They won because they were able to take the fleet's attention away from their flagship, and that flagship, that battle barge that had no masts, probably not that many guns either, was just sitting there waiting to take the W for the Krakens. A great battle, so much to think about. Um, I'm just so very interested in how it all worked out and why um, you know certain decisions that they made here, how the sort of fourth order consequences of that ended up being just completely like just getting the battle away from this. It was so important. Getting this battle into a 3-on-3 and leaving that shit behind, so important. Then again, at the end, the Karen captain moving away from the 8 guns and saving itself so that it could be the one ship remaining with the flagship at the end, so important. You can see here that there are decisions that are made in these moments that you can't even predict how well they're going to go for you or how poorly. I would have predicted here at the end that these guys may have had some advantage. I mean, looking at all these boats, maybe not. But nonetheless, just a really, really interesting battle overall. Uh, I'm going to head over to the comment section and let's take a look if any of you guys had any questions or if you wanted to critique my critique or if you have, some other conversation or question about any of the aspects of fleets. All right, let's see here. Let's see some of the comments. Yeah, the rocket boats, gunboats, they are the problem. They really are the problem. Um, it was a go-to move. Yeah, give it to middling. If that was middling, that was the who's is he the one who pulled away? He was the one who just basically saved a ship. Yeah. All right. So, and I'm just, put it in the comments if it is. It was a great move. Definitely something, you know, let's take a look here. What else are they saying? She ran the box with her friendlies here. At this point, the cannon are depleted the carrying unit gunboats ahead and kept her rocket boats to the end game. You have three left at this point. So, what do you guys think? I mean, in the chat, what do you guys think about this battle? Like, do you think, first of all, do you see it as a very close battle? Will that be explained before the next event on Sunday? Okay. So the difficulty is our major difficulty is making it so. Yeah, it was close, guys. I agree with you. It was very close. So the issue is we want to make it so that we can spawn the gunboats and rocket boats in um, for you, but we don't want to make it so that you guys like. I don't think the admins can see both team chats. Like I was hoping they could see both team chats and they could say, hey, you know, in team chat, I want a rocket boat. That way, the other team can't see it. I'm interested what you guys think. What is more important to you? To make it so that the rocket boats and gunboats don't take accidental fire, or have the secrecy of the enemy team not knowing what boat you're about to take out. Like what matters more to you guys? Because I think for me, I wouldn't care as much if the other team knew what boats I was going to be take out because honestly, God, most of the time they just look and they can see it anyway. Like it's you gain surprise for like maybe 20 seconds, and then somebody with a spyglass goes like, oh, okay, there's a rocket boat coming. At least that's how it was in our battle. Um, I definitely felt that it was like pretty predictable. Once something came out of the spawn zone, somebody told me what it was. I then had to keep an eye on it, and I knew. So I'm interested to see what you guys think about that. Sort of what's more important to you, having the ships be basically immune from getting any of that fire. Because obviously, some of those I'll make a statement. Actually, I have a statement prepared. I want to kind of explain what happened a little bit more because there's been some really good videos and research about what happened and why their ships got targeted and why they got hit. And it wasn't, spoiler alert, we weren't trying to cheat. There were people on those boats, but we'll talk about that on Sunday. Um, so, do we want to make sure that situation never happens again, or is it important that the enemy team doesn't know what ship you're about to choose? Which they would know if you had to put it in the chat and say, "Hey, admin, I'm requesting a gunboat right now because my gunboat just sank." So that's my question for you all. Feel free to put your answers in the chat. I'm very interested to hear it. Yeah, that's it. It's a good point, right? So mid battle, out and factor in which type of boat is coming out is difficult, right? So I mean, listen, there is a degree to which not knowing what boat is coming out, having them come out of spawn and hide, like these are all. I mean, hiding in the islands is what these gunboats are best at. Um, yeah, it's tough. Uh, we What another thing we thought of is basically having having some like walls around the spawn. So basically, like literally just putting up a wall around the spawn and like putting the spawns a little bit further back and then putting a wall up there so that like you really can't get in there. It's like sort of like a barrier to the spawn. The ships will come out of the spawn, but nobody will be able to go in or really target in the spawn too much. I think that could be an interesting way to handle it. I have to be honest, I'm not entirely sure that like our map makers and our organizers are going to have a fix for the next battle. I really hope that they do, but I haven't heard anything about that on the back end. So we may next week just have a battle like the battles previous. Now, when I'm not involved in the battle, like right, we took the disqualification because I want to make sure that you all know that under no circumstances are the Leviathans ever going to take a victory that is in any way, even like remotely like controversial, right? I'm the leader of the NSL. It's really important for me so that you guys all know that we're trustworthy stewards of the NSL. So that's why we did it this way. But in future, when that kind of happens, like this happened in previous battles. This is not the first battle where gunboats have been hit accidentally by teams. Um, Right. So I see what you're saying. That the single narrow point. That's why we're going to try and maybe pull the spawns back a little bit. So like, yeah, it is a narrow point, but by the time they get out of it, they might be pretty in a pretty similar place to where they would have been because our stuff is a little bit closer. Yeah, we could do multiple exits, right? So that I think is probably one of the better suggestions that we've all bandied about in the Naval Sports Commission of trying to to put some barriers with different exits. That's all cool with me. Um, but yeah. So anyway, what I'm saying is, it's happened before that these gunboats have been hit. Um, I think it happened. I mean, I'm almost sure it happened in. I can't remember the name of the teams that it was the battle, but there was one battle where there was like a lot of action around the gunboats and rocket boats. They definitely took some hits. Sometimes they spawned in and they were down a little bit. Listen, this stuff is gonna happen if the spawn zone is exposed. It's gonna be like if I'm not involved, I will make the call. And what we may do in the future, I've written it into the rules. You can check if that happens. I will consider in the future instead of like disqualifications because I think that's a very like again I wanted to make a really nice gesture to the league to show that we're very trustworthy stewards. But in the future, we'll probably do like point deductions. If you damage a ship, and obviously like it was intentional or excessive, we may dock you the points at the end of the battle. So you may still win the battle, but you may win by fewer points, right? We may dock you a certain amount of points. And those points may matter because if you and another team win the same amount, let's say you are one of the best performing teams in the league and there's another best performing team in the league. And at the end of the league, you guys both have the equal amount of wins and losses. The winner of the league will qualifying for the championship because in next year's league it's going to be a championship tournament, it's going to be a knockout tournament, so it'll be very clear. But to qualify for that league, maybe there's two teams that are right on the edge of qualifying for that league. The guy who's going to get in the league is going to be the guy who has more points. That's the tiebreaker. Is the points. That's why we keep track of them. So that is something to keep in mind. I think point docking is a really good way to deal with this problem. Hopefully, we just get rid of the problem altogether. But point docking is, I think, probably going to be my preferred method of punishment for any kind of thing that happens in the future. And we'll have to determine, agree, maybe have a more of a scaled point system for what points get docked for which offenses as they come up. But that's the whole point of this preseason. We're trying to figure out what it is that we're doing around here and what it is that what issues are going to come up, how we're going to solve them. So these are some of the ideas that I'm bandying around right now. Will the gunboat rocket boats ever be considered worth something? Maybe all four equal to one gunboat. That's an interesting question. Probably not. I don't think they will. Um, I really don't. They are on their own. The issue is they're just too easy to sink. We can increase the ship HP of all of the ships that we have in the NSL, except for the boats. And the reason being is because it doesn't take a lot of damage to demast and decannon a gunboat. And the damage it takes to demast and decannon a gunboat is usually exactly the amount of damage that would sink it. Here's the issue. If we increase the ship HP of the gunboats, they're still going to get demasted and decannoned equally as fast, but then they just become useless rowboats that can't go anywhere and can't go anywhere fast. That's a problem because then we need them to sink so that the team can move on to their next gunboat and rocket boat. But because there are so many of these boats and they sink so easily, and it takes a real deft hand to keep one alive for a whole battle, I just they're just in the hands of a great player, a gunboat or rocket boat can last for the entire battle. In the hands of somebody who's not as experienced, they can all get destroyed almost immediately. It's just too flip floppy for me, and I don't want battles to center around them too much. For me, it is a fleet battle. It's the big ships that are the stars here, whereas the little ships are like the mosquitoes, stinging them all. And for me, I see that as a very interesting but auxiliary role. Any other questions or comments? I mean, I thought this was a really great battle. Um, yeah, I was very interested to see, the tactics how they came out. I am getting told, Wavy, I think you're in here. I just saw your message. So there were three rocket boats per battle. I got told it was two. Maybe they changed it in future battles, in which case I got to check that out. I like three. I want three rocket boats. We had this huge discussion in the Admiralty. Um, Additional spawn points. Any words on not using dormant boats, additional spawn points? Yeah, I mean, I'll make a statement here. You should not be spawning on dormant boat. Listen, if you spawn on a dormant boat, that's okay. Let's be very precise about the way I say this. If a team admiral tells somebody to spawn on a dormant boat, that's fine. That's a command from an admiral, right? That's a strategy. They're trying to do it, but that has to be within the rules of you can only have two boats active at a time. If you spawn on a ship, that ship is active, and if you have three ships active, you have broken the rules, right? If it doesn't have to, it's not about the ship sailing, it's not about the cannons firing. It's about, do you have somebody on those boats? Is there some, because that's one of the things that ended up confusing us on our thing that led to our disqualification. It's that there were people on those boats. We thought they were active and people were taking shots at them, and then we got warned and we are like, okay, I guess we should stop taking shots at them. So it's complicated, but you cannot be taking crew. Like, if you want more carpenters, you can't spawn a carpenter on the third, fourth, fifth gunboat and rocket boat. You can't do it. And I think I should probably include that in the rules. Basically, any ship that has spawned a person on it. So if we look on the ship roster, and there are three gunboats that have a person, because it'll show you, it shows one person spawn on the ship, even if they're not on the ship and they spawn on it. That boat is active. You are in violation of the rules. So we're gonna have to really put that out there and make sure that everybody knows it. Um, there were people, now this again on our match, it was complicated. There were people swimming towards them. There were people swimming in rowboats in front of them. So like it was just a kind of a mess. Um, that said, yeah, you shouldn't be spawning on. But I think what happened is it may have been like mercenaries. So any mercenaries out there who are listening, don't do that. Don't do anything that you're really not told to do. You know, especially by your fleet admiral does not want to lose a match because some mercenary is not paying attention and spawns on a ship because he really wants to play carpenter right now or whatever. Please don't do that. Um, yeah, well, the thing is, I agree. If you spawn on a boat, you have to sail it out of spawn to clearly put it in play. Right, that would be great, except that's not probably why certain people are spawning on those boats. They're spawning on those boats because they want to get into a rowboat with um, they want to get it, be a carpenter, get on a rowboat, and go do some damage and sneak up on an enemy ship. Which again, it's fun, but it's also a violation of the rules. The 3-3 boat type is better split, means that the early rocket rush, for all its pros and cons, is actually a viable tactic without depriving you of the rocket boats for the rest of the match. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I'm sure that's Wave Baron. I agree with you 100%. I think that a cool strategy to kind of replicate that early rocket boat rush is a rocket boat and a gunboat. You still get the rocket boat rush there. You have the gunboat that's able to also do some damage, distract it, maybe send a gunboat in first, have all of the enemy ships like, oh, freak out because a gunboat's coming at them from behind an island really close. They all turn to deal with that, and then boom, out of nowhere, the rocket boat comes in second place. Right. So it opens up a lot of strategic possibilities. I like the 3-3 split. I actually wouldn't mind a 3-4. I wouldn't even mind keeping the amount of gunboats, and then because like we can play with the numbers of rocket boats and gunboats because they don't count towards victory except for the damage that they deal. So we have a lot of flexibility to play with those. I do like having that the forgiveness rocket boat, like you said. Basically, it's the rocket boat that you use if you threw your rocket boats away in the beginning of the round. That said, personally, I do not truck with the early rocket boat style, but that's a personal feeling. And that's not necessarily the end all be all of strategy. I don't like it. I think it wastes the rocket boats early on when we could see how important they were. Like just in this battle, we could see how important the boats are at the end of the game. I see rocket boats as late game cleanup crew. They come around to disabled ships. They come around to deeply distracted ships who are having a like crazy battle at the end. Um, and then they can do tremendous amount of damage and they can't really be dealt with. Or they distract a ship in a moment of crisis when it really needs to be focusing on sinking another large ship. Anyway, that's my feelings on it. My feelings should not dictate the rules and how things are split up. It should be something that I like the idea of the third rocket boat because it gives people that opportunity to make up for lost rocket boats. Now, when I said this to the rest of the guys who run this, they all told me that I was crazy and that we do not need more rocket boats, and that if somebody wants to race their rocket boats in the beginning, that's their damn business, and they can do it, but they got to deal with the consequences because rocket boats are very strong, and I understand that theory as well. The rocket boats are very strong. Eight rocket boats. Yeah, okay. Um, no eight rocket boats. All right, so guys, next week we will take a look at the the second game of the preseason. We'll break that down. In the future, what I'm going to try and do for future matches is I'm going to try and to get the guy who's doing the overhead shot to record his screen entirely, so we have a 100% look at the overhead shot. So when we're doing these Thursday shows, when we're here in the wardroom together, discussing the overall fleet strategy, we'll have a much clearer picture of the overall fleet strategy instead of having to use the VOD, which cuts to the close-ups every once in a while. So that will be, you won't see that for another 3 episodes of this, but I hope that you enjoyed. I will open it up to any last questions or comments that anybody has before I sign off. If anybody's got anything they want to say or ask about fleet strategy, about ships, about the NSL, please drop it in the chat now. I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. But otherwise, I am very much looking forward to next week's battle. We have the Krakens back again versus the Jackals, and that is going to be a very, very good match. I think the Krakens, if I had to guess, I would say that the Krakens come in with at least the intimidating presence of having won a battle for themselves in high style here. And I would be very interested to see if, like, coming in off of a victory inspires a team to be a little bit more bold. So, I mean, some of you guys are the KRA Karen. You know the answer already. I don't. But it's going to be great. So we've finished our first cycle. We finished our first cycle here in the NSL. And now we're going to see teams that we have seen before mixed up in ways that we have not seen before. Will be their expansion of the standard league format, small boat competitions, melee competitions, siege matches. Interesting dynamic in the future map, maybe a capture point on an island with cannons for gunboat crews to fight over. That could be interesting. So what I will say is that the maps that we have now, we may add some more like this, but we're going to keep these maps. We want to keep them mostly fleet battles. That is for the main season. So that's going to be for the whole preseason and then for most of the year of the season one. So that's going to be this year up until early December, and then next year from February on to, again, probably like late November, early December. Yeah, I'm sure it does, maybe. That's exactly how I felt too at the end of my battle. So the main season, so preseason and that main season are going to be all the standard maps. But at the end of the next season, so starting next February, at the end of that season, half of the teams are going to qualify for the championship. So ideally, 4 teams are going to fight each other. 2 teams will fight, knock one team out, and then those 2 teams will fight for the championship. The maps that those are on are going to be never before seen maps. So that's something to look forward to. And maybe we'll have crazy things in them, like an island with cannons. Maybe we'll have also, who knows what we'll have by then. We'll have had a long time to think about it. The question from Merc, will there be any expansions to the standard league format, small boat competitions, melee competition, siege matches? The answer to that question is, I think, yes. So some of the fun things that we did in the XNL, which is Harudi, that'd be freaking amazing. One of the things that we did in the XNL was we had 2-gun competitions and gunboat competitions. Atticus ran those. He ran just a stellar gunboat and rocket boat competition. I'm sorry, gunboat and 2-gun competition. We do want to bring those back. So maybe we'll take a weekend off from the NSL, like 2 weekends off throughout the year next year, where we'll have a 2-gun comp and we'll have just a pure gunboat v gunboat team comp. Because everybody seems to really enjoy those comps and everybody loves 2 guns. And unfortunately, they're just too overpowered to let into the league, but they do deserve their place in the sun, and we'll try to have that. All right, folks. I don't see too many other questions except for just the phenomenal suggestion that we have one of the finals in Harudi, which, you know what, maybe we'll just do that. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate all your questions. Please come back next Thursday. We'll go through the preseason battle number 2. which if you quiz me right now for all the money in the world who those teams were, I basically can't remember. I have the memory of a goldfish. But I will have it here for you. We'll go through it together. We'll talk about how the fleet's maneuvered. We'll talk about those decision points. I hope this has been helpful, educational, fun for you. Thank you so much. Merc signing out. Have a great night, everybody.